One summer day in 1937, three generations boarded a train heading west to Colorado Springs. A pretty 31-year-old blonde, an adolescent boy, and a very sick old man. The sick old man looked at the drawing the boy had done of a skull and screamed, "Witches! Witches!" When he realised no one was going to help him, he folded up the paper, tucked it into his pocket, and continued to sleep. This is the story of Anna Marie Hahn. Welcome to Enter the Dark. Hello and welcome to Enter the Dark. I am Jan. With me always is Les. How's it going?
It's all good. It's all good, man.
Good. He's just been telling me a story about a cat, soup, a mouse, and some grilled cheese sandwiches.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. Anyway, welcome. Today's episode is on Anna Marie Hahn. If you could just, while I've got you now, if you could just click like and subscribe if your button's not great. If it's red, it says subscribe. Hit that for us. Just because I keep doing this at the end and people like do it at the start. So do that for us and leave a comment as well. Anna Marie Hahn. Les, got no clue, have you?
No.
He's got no clue. People who do have a clue, though, and are clued up, are our Patreon supporters, who are Hannah Blue Harrington, Amanda Champagne, Astoria Crowley, Amy Emma and Jet Coleman, Lisa Dempsey, Marie T. Jensen, Casey the Cannibal, Becky Louise, Izzy from the Clink, Jules Henderson, Michelle Hudson, Alicia Llewellyn, Mandy Madden, Fire Pixie, Little Mascara, Elle, Swiss Phil, Krista, Elizabeth Lee, Cookie Fanner, and Verena Schmidt. Thank you all for giving us money. If you want to give us money too, you can do by going to www.patreon.com/enterthedark. Anything from $1 up to 50 freedom dollars. Give us your money. We need it. We do. It'd be great to do this. You could get one of these a week. If you want to give us loads of money. So there you go. It's up to you. If you can't, we have to go back to our jobs.
Yes.
Anyway, Anna Marie Hahn. This is a bit of a little tidbit one. A history for you, Les, as well. Got this one especially for you.
Nice, I love a history one.
Let's do it then, motherfucker. So then, Anna Marie Hahn had a tranquil storybook childhood that was destroyed when adulthood descended on her too fast, like a lightning bolt from a dark lover. It broke her heart.
A dark lover.
Yeah. At least that was what she wanted people to believe. She was born in 1906 in the idyllic Bavarian town of Füssen, where she was perched on the edge of the Alps and known for its violin makers.
No.
Yeah, you want a violin, you go to Füssen.
Go to Füssen for the violins.
They're not Swedish.
No.
Anyway, her father, George Felser, was a furniture manufacturer and their family was religious, well-off and respected. Anna was the youngest of 12. Jesus fucking Christ.
No TV back then, though, were there?
No, but 5 of her siblings were dead anyway, so, they were just trying to make up for it.
Jesus.
She was probably adored and spoiled by her entire family, and her mother, Katie, always admitted that Anna was her favourite. To all her other kids, like, Anna's my favourite. So, into this whimsical German town crept a man named Dr. Max Maschecki. Maschecki. He was a famous Viennese physician working on a cure for cancer. Spoiler alert, he didn't find one. One of the greatest doctors in the world, and handsome as a movie star. He wooed 19-year-old Anna sweetly. They swayed together on the dance floor as he whispered romantic promises into her ear. It was the kind of love that every young girl thinks about. This love at first sight, said Anna. I was happy then. Maschecki swore he would marry her, and eventually, borne along this idealistic narrative, Anna tumbled into bed with him. Why not? Why not? They're consenting. She was secure in his love and excited for their future together, but when Dr. Max Maschecki found out that Anna was pregnant, he balked her. There was someone else, he said, a wife in Vienna. It was like a mountain falling on me, said Anna. Not killing me, but just smothering me and crushing me. I mean, joke's on him, he didn't find the cure for cancer. The only reason anyone talks about him now is because he did this. But anyway, so the story, it was quite poetic, and there was just one problem. no Max Machete ever practiced medicine in Vienna.
Oh.
The doctor was a figment, a shadow lover, a stand-in for some ordinary man. But the child was very real, and when Anna's conservative family found out she was expecting, they were mortified. There was no hiding a teenage pregnancy in their small pious town, and as soon as Anna's son Oscar was born, the family decided she should get out of their sight altogether and leave for America, where all single mothers should go, apparently.
Yeah.
So Anna was actually happy to go after enduring the town's gossip for 9 long months. I could no longer stand those things those people were saying about my misfortune with a fake doctor who didn't find a cure for cancer. So it took her 2 years to get a visa, and she left at age 22, leaving her son behind until she could establish herself overseas. A trip across the ocean away from Oscar must have been excruciating. The little pleasure I have gotten out of her life has been from my boy, she said. Until the end of her life, Anna spoke fondly of Dr. Max Machete. Perhaps she liked the way the story made her sound, a dreamy, innocent, sexually appealing girl, tossed madly about on the waves of a foreign love affair. A victim. The tale about Oscar's parentage was one of her most cinematic lies. Sex and a cure for cancer.
And a cure for cancer. It's got it all.
And this was the most innocent of the lies, because nobody died. Possibly Max Machete, like in Drop Dead Said Fred, where you're like, your imaginary friend, and when you stop believing in him, they just die. So, to fund her trip, Anna wrote to her uncle Max Doschel, who lived in Cincinnati, and asked him to fund a loan. The two weren't close. In fact, Doschel had never heard from his niece before. Still, he sent her $236 and waited, unsure of what sort of person to expect. Later, Anna would boast that he sent her a mind-boggling $16,000, because she was always lying about money. Now, she arrived in Cincinnati in February 1929, a pretty blonde who spoke English well. She contracted scarlet fever almost immediately and was sick for several months.
Jesus. Straight in there, scarlet fever.
I mean, now she knows how the Native Americans feel.
Yeah.
But by April, she was healthy enough to find employment at a hotel. As soon as she began making money, she started behaving like a different person. Doschel and his wife were confused by her generous income. She was more than able to take care of her own financial needs, especially since she hadn't offered to repay any of that loan. She had a habit of making extravagant purchases and acting secretive about them, as though to disguise the fact that they were too expensive for a housework girl. She was even told them that she was building a house, which didn't make any sense. So how in the world could she be able to afford that? But logic be damned, Anna wanted to be seen as the sort of person who could build herself a house if she wanted to. At the hotel where she worked, she met a mild, mousy figure named Philip Hahn. He was no romantic Viennese doctor, but she liked that he promised the sort of safe harbour. He was nice to me and said he loved me and wanted to marry me. Also, he was real, she said. Then again, I was afraid at first when he talked about marriage. When Hahn agreed to act as Oscar's father, Anna finally relented, and the two married a year later. By July 1930, Anna was ready to go back to Germany and get her son. Now, her aunt and uncle were blindsided when Anna returned to Cincinnati with a tiny blonde boy in tow, since she'd never mentioned him before. She's like, who's that? It's my son, Oscar. And they're like, you never mentioned me to an Oscar to me before. Yeah. And he's like, he's my son. He's living with us now in my house that I am building with Dr. Max Michel. Anyway, fed up with her lies and weirded out by her fucking weird behaviour, the two eventually decided to cut all ties with her, just as her nuclear family had done back in Germany. So the United States had already begun its sickening economic collapse into the Great Depression, and Anna's thoughts turned ever more towards money. Now, she was addicted to betting on horse races and often signed bad cheques when she lost wages. She opened a restaurant with her husband and then tried to burn it down for insurance money. She tried to burn down her own house for the same reason. Perhaps money fed into some huge romantic delusion she had. The same delusion led her to insist her uncle had sent her $16,000 for a trip to America, a fairy tale amount, implying wealthy, indulgent relatives and a luxurious trip across the Atlantic. Regardless, gambling and arson soon stopped satisfying her, and she began to look for bigger game. Now, Today, some evolutionary psychologists theorise that male serial killers are hunters, while the females are merely gatherers, sensibly collecting resources from their victims instead of doing it out of a deep, unslakable thirst for violence. Now, Anna may have technically collected money from her crimes, but she was a hunter to her core. She set her sights on victims like she was looking through a rifle scope and stalked them with heartless, single-minded purpose. And like a true predator, she preyed on the weak. She was actually kind of sloppy criminal, but her victims were lonely and innocent and easy to fool. They thought the rest of the world had forgotten about them and desperately wanted to believe that a blonde woman bending over them was something like an angel. It's what we all want, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, my wife's blonde. One of her
just throwing that out there, Jan.
You're like, I want a blonde woman. Right? Oh, my wife's blonde.
No,
not borrowing.
No. Ugh. Sorry, not to Beck. Jesus, sorry. That was a bit like.
It was, wasn't it?
It's like, that was me. What the fuck are you trying to say, Les? Ugh.
It's a good job she doesn't watch any of my videos, isn't it? Anyway, one of her earliest paramours was a man named Ernest Kohler. He was 62 years old landlord. Kohler was the owner of a large, lovely house, and in 1932 he was renting 2 of the rooms to the Hahns and another to a doctor who never locked his office. That'll come into play. It's not just the forgetful doctor. Sometimes Anna would sneak in and forge prescriptions for narcotics on the doctor's blank prescription pads. But mostly, she flirted with Kohler. She was like, "Oh, hello. Oh, sorry. My Bavarian milk jugs are spilling everywhere." She had milk jugs, but she was like, "Oh, look at me. I am a milkmaid."
Imaginary milk jugs, like her imaginary doctor.
Yeah. So Kohler died suddenly on May 6, 1933, and his death was a windfall for Anna. He left her his beautiful old house, valued at $12,000, plus a car, $1,167 in a savings account, and heaps of expensive antiques. Now, this was a bit awkward when the coroner's office received several anonymous phone calls insisting that Kohler had been poisoned, but Anna carefully explained that no, he died of esophageal cancer. I mean,
yeah, because they're the same thing, aren't they, then? Like poison and cancer of the esophagus.
Yeah, but the coroner, he checked the esophagus, he found no poison, and he sent him to the crematorium and
Did he find any cancer, though? Like,
he wasn't looking for cancer, he was looking for poison. He's not doing 2 jobs. This is America, damn it.
Land of the free.
Land of the free, and also the lazy. It's like, well, you haven't told me to look for that specifically. So, for Anna, this was the perfect relationship. She liked her men elderly and lonely and preferably German so they could bond over their shared heritage. These men were usually retired, which meant they were potentially sitting on healthy piles of cash, and neglected by society, which meant they were vulnerable to her charms. She offered herself up to them as sort of an attendant cum girlfriend, willing to nurse, cook, or flirt at the drop of the hat. Like, take your hat off, drop. "Hey, you're looking very nice today." Thank you. I actually wanted something to eat. But here's another hat. "Oh, sandwich. Yeah, I'll get you some schnitzel." These men have benched themselves. They were there. There they were, sitting around in the lonely bachelor apartment. Suddenly this golden creature appeared at the doors, willing to laugh at their jokes and cook them decadent, nostalgia-inducing meals. She's like, "Here is some Wurst." He's like, "I remember Wurst from when I was in Germany."
Breakfast is dead nice.
It is fucking dead nice. Sometimes she would even let them kiss her. And soon the men found themselves throwing around words like engagement and honeymoon.
Jesus.
Fingering. She was a miracle, really. The fingering isn't on there. They may have fingered her.
Could have.
Could have done. Yeah. Anyway, a second lease on life, and such a treat to look at. Vivacious, with big hazel eyes and a delicate beauty that was hard to capture on film because they didn't have any. And his next male friend was 63-year-old coal dealer named Georgie Heiss, who called her "my girl" and devoured her Hügelscheimer Pfannkuchen, the Bavarian pancakes she whipped up for him.
Oh, okay.
Hügelscheimer Pfannkuchen. When Anna Quayle informed Heiss she had divorced her husband, lies, the smitten man began to drop hints about marriage. She was like, "Oh, if your Hügelscheimer Pfannkuchen are this good, I wonder how much good your marriage is."
And your strudel.
Anyway, Philip Horn, what was he doing? Where was he?
Yeah, where was he at this point? Yeah, I'm wondering this. Is just like sort of
Now, he's basically just like a fucking minor person in her life now. He disapproved of her friendships with elderly men, but she ignored him. Now, she poisoned one of his meals once, but her attempt was so half-hearted, we can only surmise that harm meant nothing to her. He wasn't even important or rich enough to kill. Hahn, who became violently ill after the meal, suspected she tried to murder him, and understandably, their marriage began to cool off a bit.
I think we should see other people.
But in his defence, he stuck around probably for Oscar's sake.
Which is sweet, yeah. What a nice guy.
Yeah. Now, back at Heist's apartment, Anna often sidled up to her ageing paramour with this innocent little request for money, and he had lent to her willingly, sometimes a cash out of his pocket, sometimes money from his business, the Consolidated Coal Company, or CCC for short. By the time her loans reached $2,000, the company's credit manager popped up, demanding an explanation. Heist was forced to admit that he had a pretty new girlfriend and couldn't say no to her. The credit manager, impervious to the madness of love, began pressuring Anna to repay her loans. This was something of a reality check for Heist. He began looking at Anna with a colder, more dispassionate eyes, and realised that not only did Anna ask him for money all the time, but her cooking often made him feel sick. In fact, some days he could barely get out of bed. Now, Heist ran his suspicions past the credit manager. Was this girl trying to poison him? The next time Anna showed up with her signature dish, spinach sprinkled with white granules that seemed to be salt.
Seemed to be.
Heist told her he wanted his $2,000 back and that he never wanted to see her again. I mean, if something's on there, you taste it, that doesn't taste like salt. What is it? It's seemingly salt. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Now, Heist had no idea. Why would you just eat spinach and salt?
It sounds very austere, doesn't it? Yeah.
It sounds fucking German as fuck. Heist had no idea he was effectively signing death warrants for Cincinnati's other aging bachelors, but his demands forced Anna to speed up her hunt. At the end of 1936, she met Albert Palmer, 72, and they bonded over their mutual love of betting on horse races. Like Heist, Palmer called Anna his girl and devoured her cooking. They planned a trip to Florida together. Oh, Jesus.
Florida.
This is fucking... Why would you want to go to Florida? She left him with clean little notes that probably drove him wild. My dear sweet daddy, wrote on one note. I'll see you tomorrow then with all my love and lots of kisses. Your Anna. She sweet-talked him out of $2,000, which she used in part to pay Heist. So she's like flirting with this other guy, gets money and then paid him off.
Oh.
But eventually Palmer too grew wise. He began to ask Anna if there was any way she could start repaying her loan to him, and she responded by serving him dinners that wrecked his health. He may have also overheard neighbourhood gossip that Anna's recent affair with Heist. Now, hurt and furious, Palmer gave Anna an ultimatum. She could either repay the $2,000 right away, or she could become his girlfriend, permanently and exclusively. I mean, that's not really an ultimatum, is it?
That's not an ultimatum at all.
Your cooking is really making me feel ill. So either give me my money, or you got to stay with me forever. Now, Anna, she never made that choice because on March 26, 1937, he died of what appeared to be a heart attack. Now, Anna had unearthed her next benefactor by showing up at a random apartment building and boldly asking a woman if any old men live here.
Random request, doesn't it? Like, how old are we talking?
Yeah.
Like,
When she found out a German immigrant named Jacob Wagner was renting one of the apartments, she told the suspicious tenant that, oh yes, that's right, Wagner was my uncle. And even though she hadn't known his name minutes before.
Oh, now I remember.
Then she slipped a note under his door, organised a meeting and hit it off with Wagner immediately. I have a new girl, he boasted to a pal. His new girl often asked him for loans and assured him she was good for it by showing him a forged bank book that indicated she had over $15,000 in her bank. Was that number any connection to the imaginary $16,000 for her uncle? Maybe that was her dream amount, a number she associated with stability and fairy tale happiness, or just a coincidence. Now, Anna was getting really sloppy. She was juggling multiple men, some of whom moved in the same circles as others. Her requests for money were becoming bizarre. If she really did have $15,000 in the bank, why would she need a loan?
Yeah.
But she was now boldly hunting for victims by asking strangers where she could find old men. So, where are the old men around here? The retirement home. Are they rich? No, I want rich old men. Now, that was Anna's genius, targeting the isolated, and she certainly made some people suspicious. Like, the women at Wagner's apartment remembered her weird question forever, but for the most part, there wasn't anyone around to give a shit. Now, while Anna pursued Wagner, she killed again on the low, low price of $80 and a rabbit fur coat. Now, she befriended an elderly widow by dressing up in a fake nun's uniform and offering her services. I mean, it'd work. And then stole the valuables that the widow kept under her bed. I just love to make old people comfy, she said later. She brought herself a beautiful coat with the profits and offered to find the culprit if the unsuspecting widow paid her $80. Afterwards, she finished off the poor woman with a dish of poisoned ice cream. At least it's better than spinach and seemingly salt.
Yeah.
You know, bit of ice cream with arsenic in. Fine. Fucking spinach and seemingly salt.
Spinach and seemingly. Maybe it was spinach ice cream.
With seemingly salt.
Yeah.
Anyway, back at Wagner's apartment, things were getting creepy. He began to look at Anna when his bank book went missing. But Anna assured him she'd done nothing wrong and placated him with well-seasoned food and drink. Soon enough, he was in the hospital, semi-conscious, retching with pain, and in a state of shock and dying. It was a horrifying sight. Arsenic makes its victims crazed with thirst. Shortly before he died, Wagner begged a nurse for something to drink, whispering, "Ich konnte einfach voll Wasser trinken," which means, I could drink a barrel of water.
Wow.
Now, Anna showed up at the nearest probate court like a classically trained actress ready to play Lady Macbeth. After she cried a sufficient number of demure yet heart-rending tears, she suggested that perhaps one of the deputies should search Wagner's apartment just in case there were any, say, important papers lying around. Surely enough, the deputy found a handwritten will on Wagner's mantle. I hereby make my last will and testament, and I am under no influence. I have paid my money into the Fifth Third Bank. After my funeral expenses and all bills are paid, I want the rest to go to my relative, Anna Hahn. I want Mrs. Hahn to be my executor. I don't want any flowers, and I don't want to be laid out. Now, the will, surprise, surprise, was written by Anna herself, and the level of cold-blooded confidence Miss Hahn displayed in directing authorities straight to the forgery is pretty much impressive.
Yeah.
Now, she was really careless criminal, and part of her carelessness was due to her utter lack of empathy. Last will and testament, an old lady's $80, nothing was sacred to her. Nothing got under her skin, and just like so many of her other con jobs, this one worked. Now, at the time, authorities had no reason to suspect this charming, distraught blonde had apparently nobody cared enough about Wagner to prove or disprove Anna's place in the family tree. Her rampage continued. A few weeks later, she befriended 67-year-old George Gesselman, a German-speaking Hungarian immigrant who considered himself to be a bit of a ladies' man. Oh, George.
Oh, George.
After meeting Anna, he boasted to one of his exes, "You wouldn't marry me, and now I went and got a young blonde German school teacher, yeah."
Nobody likes a bragger, like, fuck off.
Anna only managed to charm him out of $100, but that was a lot of money for Gesselman. In fact, Gesselman's banker noted it was the largest sum his client had ever withdrawn. One night, an ecstatic Gesselman told two of his neighbours that he was getting married the next day. By morning, the bridegroom's body was stiffening on his bed. There was a half-eaten meal on the stove, laced with 18 grains of arsenic. This was far more than necessary to kill a man, but who cared? Not Anna.
She had all the arsenic. She
loved the arsenic.
She was liberal with her arsenic.
No wonder they stopped selling arsenic.
It's all fucking arsenic, isn't it? Like, in these times. Like, Jesus.
So, apparently, poison is for weaklings, Les. The English poet Phineas Fletcher may have been the first to coin the term coward's weapon, but the opinion has not dissipated in the century since. So, Game of Thrones recently snapped that poison was a gutless way to kill. Poison is sneaky, it's slow, and you can poison someone without spilling a drop of their blood or awkwardly making eye contact with them mid-impalement. As such, it doesn't get a lot of credit for being scary. Poisoners simply don't terrify people the way, say, like Jack the Ripper disemboweling people does.
Or like Vlad the Impaler, like impaling somebody. Like, it's...
Yeah, but it is unfair though, because like poisoning requires advanced planning and a stomach for a drawn-out death scene. So you need to look into your victim's trusting eyes day after day after day, while their lives slowly going away.
And skill as well, I guess. It's like
Yeah.
because like not every human being is the same, are they? Really? Like some people are going to have like a higher constitution. Like there was that dude, like this Irish guy who so there were these like barmen who were these bar owners. It was during like Prohibition, and they picked up on the idea that they could kill people and claim the insurance money from them. They'd do that. I forget what the case was, but there was this one guy who kept coming into their bar. It was this Irish guy, and he could just absolutely like nail like fucking alcohol. And so they were like, right, he is our next fucking victim. Like, we're going to get him fucking shit-faced drunk. And their method was to, like, get him drunk and then fucking throw water on him and leave the window open so they die of hypothermia. But this Irish guy, they tried that. Didn't fucking work because he was, like, used to sleeping rough. So then they started trying to poison him. But his constitution was, like, just that rock hard. At one point, they were feeding him sandwiches, like, with broken glass and fucking rat poison.
It's like fucking Rasputin, isn't it?
Like Rasputin. And, like, they eventually did. They resorted in hiring a hitman, like, to try and run him over at one point. And then that didn't fucking work. I'll have to find you this case. It's fucking batshit. But, yeah, like, what I'm trying to say is, like, fucking... Some people have a way higher constitution than other people.
Yeah. I mean, not George, then. Hannah was not a coward, though, was she?
She wasn't a coward, no.
She knew how to draw death out and make it hurt like hell. Her final victim was a lot like the others, but for some reason, Anna was exceptionally nasty to this man. She poisoned him until he was writhing in his own feces. His last days were a nightmare sequence of pain, hallucination, and she killed him hundreds of miles from his home.
Shit.
Johann George Oberdorfer, Obendorfer, that'll be do. Was a rich I mean, we could fucking get the Germans do it. You know, in a few years' time, no one's going to be talking about the Germans in a nice way, are they? This is like the 1930s.
This is very true.
Yeah.
This is very true.
So he was a semi-retired cobbler, a widower, and a proud grandpa of 11 grandchildren. One day he had surprised at his shop by a charming, blonde, German-speaking lady who dropped by to see if she could fix one of her high-heel shoes. Perhaps Anna, who was still seeing Gesellman at the time, already knew what sort of man worked there, and the broken heel was just a ruse. Regardlessly, Obendorfer fell hard for her. After a few weeks of dating, Obendorfer seemed like a changed man. He shaved off his moustache to appear younger, and he began dropping hints about getting engaged. Why does everyone fucking get engaged in this day and age?
Heteronormal
It's
relationships.
just sort of like, you're old, you're dating this blonde bird, you know, it's just enjoy it while you can.
Social, like, fucking pretense, isn't it?
Anyway, Anna told him coquettishly that they should take a vacation together before she really committed. She claimed to own a beautiful home on a cattle ranch in Colorado, and she told Obendorfer that they should bring Oscar to check it out, and if they liked it, maybe the three of them could move there for good. Obendorfer loved the idea, and so Anna quickly murdered Gesellman and began to plan the trip.
Fuck you off.
She was just like, have some of this seemingly salt. Obendorfer had never been happier. A second life was opening up before him, a bride, a marriage, acres of wild American land to call his own, and even a kid. On July 20th, 1937, he packed his satchel and strode over to Anna's house, grabbing a celebratory beer on the way. He is German. Isn't he?
One of those big, like, double pint bastards.
Do you know, in Germany, you go to a shop and, like, you buy a can of beer. The guy behind the counter will be like, do you want me to open it for you? Because you can just walk down the street drinking.
I don't like the sound of that.
It's not like in England where you got the tramps doing it, being loud. It's just people walking around, looking at architecture, having a beer. Like when Lee worked in Germany at like one of the nuclear plants things there, like for some physics shit, you could get beers out of the like vending machine, and you could have 3 beers on your shift.
Nice.
Yeah, you could sit there. I mean, it's different there. You can, when you go watch football, you can sit and have a beer. So Anna had prepared a delicious dinner to kick off their journey, a dinner seasoned with those white granules which she seemed to love to cook with. By morning, Obendorfer was so sick that Anna and Oscar had to help him into the cab. The three of them pressed on anyway, taking the train from Cincinnati to Chicago, where Anna checked herself into a fancy hotel with Oscar and tossed Obendorfer into a cheap motel room nearby, and then on to Denver, where they disembarked for a few days. On their first morning there, Anna and Oscar went to check on Obendorfer, found him writhing in bed, splattered with feces and vomit. Anna pretending to soothe him by feeding him cool chunks of watermelon as Oscar watched, but Obendorfer couldn't keep anything down. So she left the man in his misery and busied herself with the tricky business of stealing his life savings. Now, Anna wrote a letter to his banker in Cincinnati claiming that Obendorfer was planning to move to Denver and wanted to transfer his money to the Denver National Bank and needed $1,000 to tide him over in the meantime. For the next week, she haunted the Denver National Bank to see if the money had arrived, growing more and more frustrated as the days went by. Now, meanwhile, Obendorfer's hotel room had gotten so disgusting that the housekeeping staff refused to go in. And the
wow.
It's fully just shit and vomit. And after the hotel owner peeked in and saw Obendorfer curled in a fetal position, moaning and surrounded by his own filth, he urged Anna to take him into the hospital. Anna scoffed that she barely knew the man and then bundled Obendorfer onto
I don't know him.
She's like, I do not know who this man is whose money I am taking and came with me. She boarded him on a train to Colorado Springs. Now, at this point, Obendorfer was surely suspected he was being poisoned, but he was lost in a fog of agony. All he could do was beg for water and stare blankly out of the train window. When Oscar showed him the skull drawing, Obendorfer seemed to muster the strength to accuse two of them of Witches, or Haxen in German.
Haxen.
But everyone simply laughed at his terror. He must have killed against the glass there. He's got the skull drawing there going, oh, fucking hell, these Americans.
Also, what's up with fucking Oscar, this kid? Like, nice, a skull, like...
I mean, this is the thing, though. He's there next to the dying man. He's, like, really creepy. Now, he probably didn't understand the full extent of what was happening, but he saw it all. Now, he'd smelled the vomit. He'd seen the agony. He'd watched his mum feed, like, the chunks of poisoned watermelon, and Anna apparently carried a salt shaker of arsenic with her and would liberally salt Oben for his food. So he's like, I just need this chocolate. Here, have some salt!
More salt!
Now, apparently Oscar, he had soft curls, perfect features, and an attentive, intelligent face. He has certainly helped Anna seem non-threatening, even Madonna-like. Now, some people who knew him said he was a mean little kid who killed animals for fun and once shot a BB gun at his friend, but who cares? You know, kids do kids. Maybe his mother kept him around because it made her look good. Now, in Colorado Springs, Anna and Oscar left Obendorfer to fend for himself while they went sightseeing. When the two arrived back at the hotel, Anna noticed that the door to the owner's private rooms was slightly ajar. Peeking inside, she saw 2 diamond rings sparkling on the dresser. Now, she stole them. As she was leaving the room, she ran smack into the hotel owner's wife, who naturally suspicious. Anna explained that she was simply curious at how the rooms looked. The theft of the rings in broad daylight was a stupid, careless, greedy mistake on her part, and a fatal one. With the rings rattling around inside her pocket, she finally checked Obendorfer into the hospital, registering him as a homeless person. Now, he died there without ever reaching the paradise he'd been promised. We shouldn't laugh at that, should we?
No, that's like dead vile, but just like,
he's just a homeless person.
He's a damn vagrant.
Covered in his own shit. At the beginning of August 1937, police in Cincinnati opened a secret investigation into the death of Jacob Wagner after receiving a tip from one of his friends, who noticed a strange woman hanging around Wagner's house in the days before he died. Meanwhile, detectives were heading over to Anna Marie Hahn's place on a seemingly unrelated charge, the theft of 2 diamond rings, which Anna had pawned for $7.50 on her way back to Cincinnati. When the police showed up at Anna's doorstep, she protested her arrest loudly. At first, they took her in on charges of grand larceny, but arresting Anna was like tugging on a loose string. Suddenly, everything seemed to be unravelling. They discovered that she had nursed Jacob Wagner right before he died. She'd been in Colorado Springs around the time a Cincinnati resident named Obendorfer had died suspiciously, and that she had poison hidden in the rafters of her house. and so on and so on and so on. Now, this pretty jewellery thief was starting to seem like the world's biggest criminals that Cincinnati had ever produced. Now, the day after her arrest, warrants of fugitive murder and larceny were signed against her by one detective, Walter Hart. In reaction, Anna combed her hair, smiled, and told the press they were welcome to take her photo. "I am here, boys," she said, blonde hazel eyes and eyes nicely calm. "Make this a good picture of me." She's weirdo, isn't she?
Yeah.
"How can they make such a charge?" she asked. "I can face anything there is to come."
I don't know, Anna Marie Hahn. How can they?
How can they do this to you? Now, something in Anna's case appealed to women of Cincinnati. It wasn't that they empathised with her per se, but they were desperately curious to see how she acted in court, and the fact that she was a mother touched their hearts. On the day of Anna's arraignment, the courtroom was crowded with 15 women to every man, women that had waited long hours outside the door to make sure they were the first inside. Now, Anna showed zero emotion in the courtroom, but it didn't matter when Oscar ran up to whisper something in her ear. Several of the women wiped their eyes and one juror sobbed openly. The jury skewed as female as the audience. It consisted of 11 women and one good-looking man. And the press quickly nicknamed the lot of them the Petticoat Jury.
The Petticoat Jury.
Now, journalists were understandably excited about this case, which was already shaping up to be a fiery, sensational and rife with opportunity for long editorials. In fact, the only people who didn't seem to care about this case were Anna's siblings back in Germany. Now, upon being notified that their sister was arrested, they responded that they were uninterested.
Uninterested. I love that. It's just like, we're uninterested.
We're uninterested in this case's outcome, and they were going to hide the news from their aging mother as not to upset her. Still, Anna convinced herself that one of her sisters would show up at the trial and had officially started. "It would be a comfort to me to have some member of my family with me," she mused. Hannah was thinking about her family a lot in jail, especially her mother. She sent her a telegram that read, "Just pray for me." Her siblings never bothered showing it to the mother. During one of the prison Sunday services, she requested a hymn called "Mother's Prayers Have Followed Me," unaware of the irony. Her mother had no idea where she was or what she'd been doing. Now, other than Oscar and Philip Hahn, none of Anna's family ever showed up to support her. They'd written her out of their lives a long time ago, and they were officially uninterested. Not shocked, appalled, heartbroken, or righteously indignant, just uninterested. I mean, does this mean they were also unsurprised? You know, had they always thought there was some sort of darkness in her? Even in her youth, did they sense like she was cruel, like she had no empathy, and pull away from her as soon as they could drum up an excuse? Maybe. Anna's trial was set for October the 11th, and she would be tried for the murder of Jacob Wagner because the prosecution thought his would be the easiest one to prove. They had the handwritten will and an expert who could prove it was forged, and the exhumation results, which showed there was enough arsenic in Wagner's body to have killed him twice over. The prosecutor, Dudley Miller Outcalt, was the best in the business, a brilliant orator with a flair for courtroom drama. The press adored his fiery opening statement, during which he declared he would prove Anna Hahn killed so many men there is not another person like her on the face of the earth. On the other side of the aisle, Anna's defence team quaked. They had never handled a serious criminal case of any sort, much less a murder case.
We're out of our depth here, lads.
Plus, one of the members, Jody Fudding, was suffering from a bad cold. He ended up being a rather pitiful figure. At one point, he declared that he was planning to bring out 53 witnesses to prove Anna's innocence, but he was only able to deliver 2. He eventually called the gig a job nobody can handle.
I've got this image of, like, you know, that episode of The Simpsons with Mayor Quimby where the devil ones pop up because he's fucking, like, dead ill.
In contrast to these intense emotional lawyers, Anna was developing a reputation as an ice queen. Every time she appeared in court, she was impeccably turned out. Her fellow prisoners, obsessed with their celebrity cellmate, would do her hair with a gold cross around her neck and flat, emotionless eyes. In prison, she read the newspaper articles that tried to analyse her phlegmatic enigma of her personality, amused. Her denial was calm, consistent and relentless. "They'll never get a confession out of me because I can't confess to something I never did," she told a reporter. "But I suppose the death of anyone past 60 anywhere in the country now will be laid to me." Fucking calm down.
I wonder why.
Stop poisoning people, you dick. Her calm seemed to mask a certain delusion, because things were not looking good for Uri. Arsenic had been found in the bodies of not just Wagner, but Palmer, Salmon, and Obendorfer. And on October 22nd, the judge declared that the prosecution could now admit the other poisonings into evidence, instead of just discussing Wagner's murder. Witness after witness took the stand to skewer her. There was a tenant who remembered Anna inquiring if any old men live here. The neighbours who talked about her abnormally unflustered attitude towards death, and bank employees with records for suspicious financial behaviour, bringing in cheques that didn't quite look right, and so on. Handwriting experts determined that Wagner's will had been forged by Anna herself. A toxicologist studied Anna's favourite summer purse and found grains of arsenic all over the lining. Doctors presented the horrified jury with brains, livers and kidneys of the murdered men, floating gruesomely in jars of preservative.
Nice.
Just jam.
Yeah.
Preserves.
That's a person.
Now, the prosecution's star witness was George Heiss. He had the poisoned spinach and the unpaid debt to the Consolidated Coal Company. He became known as their living witness, and his presence in the courtroom was ghastly and damning. Now, the prosecution could not have asked for a more incriminating visual. He was skeletally thin, confined to a wheelchair, pointing at Anna with shaking hands and telling the jury that this was the woman who tried to murder him in cold blood. Finally, both Oscar and Anna took to the stand. Oscar had been coached to give certain answers, and he spoke carefully. Yes, he brought Obendorfer water. No, he didn't realise that the old man was dying. The boy slipped up only once when he admitted that his mother had initially asked him to lie about meeting Obendorfer on the train. Anna was even calmer than her son. The prosecution tried their best to crack her, but Anna wouldn't crack. If she had a conscience, it remained buried deep inside her, invulnerable to remorse, rhetorical pressure, and looming threat of a guilty verdict. Now, Outcalp's closing remarks brought down the house. Anna Hahn is the only one in God's world that has a heart for such murders, he cried to the jury. She sits there with her Madonna face and her soft voice, and had a ruthless, passionate purpose like the likes of which the state has never known. Now, Huddin's response was lackluster. He's like, sure, Anna wasn't perfect, but who is?
Wow, that was his rebuttal.
His rebuttal is, she's not perfect, but who is?
Who is? Are any of us, by the grace of God, go us?
He went on to claim that the prosecution couldn't prove precisely how the arsenic got into Wagner's body. No one brought the argument. Huddin's only stroke of genius occurred when he reminded the jury that Anna was a mother. As everyone in the courtroom wept, Huddin urged them to spare her so she could return to her boy. Even Hannah managed to drum up a tear or two. But it was too late to humanise her. Outcalp stood up again to finish his speech, calling Anna sly, vicious, cold-blooded, heartless, and he pulled out his grand finale. In the four corners of this courtroom stand 4 dead men, he cried, and pointed at each corner as he bellowed the names. Jacob Wagner, George Selman, George Obendorfer, Albert Palmer.
This guy is fucking extra. Yeah. What a dude.
Now, the jurors were breathless. Outcalp continued in a thunderous voice. From the 4 corners of this room, bony fingers point at her and they say to you, that woman poisoned me. That woman made my last moment an agony. That woman tortured me with tortures of the damned. Now,
wow.
Pretty good rhetorical.
Yeah, what a dude.
He brought the dead men into life in a horrifying contrast with the accused, who sat there pale and motionless, looking all over the world like she was carved out of wax. Now, the stunned petticoat jury returned the harshest verdict possible. Guilty, without a recommendation of mercy. This meant that the death penalty was mandatory. As the ruling was read aloud, many of the jurors had tears standing in their eyes. Anna didn't. In December 1937, while her lawyers scrambled to find a way around the death penalty, Anna was moved to the Ohio Penitentiary in Columbus, where a special cell was built to isolate her from the rest of the inmates. She was the only female prisoner there. At first, the matrons in charge of her were impressed by this tiny blonde woman. She is the bravest woman I ever saw, said the wife of the warden. Obsessive strangers wrote to Anna, offering to take her place in jail or asking if they could have her clothes after her execution.
What the... I guess that's a thing. That's been a thing for centuries, hasn't it? Like mementos.
Yeah. I mean, it was there that Anna decided to write her confessions, and they were full of deluded excuses. The psychiatrist might spot a couple of classic psychopathic traits in the document include blame externalization. She tried to pin her crimes onto various childhood sicknesses, accidents and surgeries, and expressed a lot of confusion about why she did them, as though she was utterly not responsible for her actions. I was sitting there hearing a story like out of a book about another person, she wrote. I couldn't in my mind believe that was me, Anna Marie Hahn, who loved people so well and wanted friends all the time. God above will tell me what made me do these terrible things. I couldn't have been in my right mind when I did them. Her lawyers kept up the desperate battles for Anna's life, claiming that she was tried as a hunted animal because of the introduction of the other murders, as evidence had biased the jury beyond all hope.
Well, yeah. That's the point.
As Anna's execution date loomed nearer and nearer, they took their protestations to the governor of Ohio to see if he could reduce Anna's sentence to life in prison. Anna was convinced he would. On December the 1st, Oscar testified in front of the governor's executive secretary, asking for his mother's life as a Christmas present.
Oh no, that's emotionally manipulative.
It is,
Isn't it? Wow.
I mean, it didn't work.
Oh, good.
Anna learned her final bit of fail. She collapsed, screaming, "Oh my God! I didn't think he could do that to me. He should let me live for my boy." Now, Anna had always been a bit of a shapeshifter. She had a psychopath's charm, and it could be directed with laser-like precision, and even if she was focused it on someone, they became convinced that she was warm, loving, and vivacious. If she didn't bother to charm someone like her relatives and various suspicious neighbours, she appeared secretive and devious, a strange woman who wore fake nurses' uniforms and seemed weirdly unmoved when her elderly friends died. And now, with all hope gone, a new Anna emerged, wild, hopeless, completely undone. She would pace round her cell in the middle of the night, sobbing and chain-smoking cigarettes. At points she would cry out, "My God, what about Oscar?" In her last 24 hours, reported one of the matrons who guarded her, Anna Hahn changed from the poised, confident, proud and even vain woman she had been continuously since she was first arrested to a little witch.
A little witch.
A demon with a wild look in her eyes. When she knew the jig was up, she became the true Anna. The day before her execution, Anna and Oscar spent hours together. Anna couldn't touch her lunch. When visiting hours ended and the matrons began to hint it was time for Oscar to leave, Anna started kissing Oscar's face repeatedly. The matrons told her again that Oscar had to go. She ignored them and continued to kiss him. Finally, one matron had to physically tear Oscar away from her. "Don't take him from me!" Anna screamed. Oscar wept as he was led from his mother's cell, and Anna leapt at her matrons with such violence that she had to be injected with a sedative. This fucking killer! Now, for years, Oscar had been her little blonde sidekick, accompanying her on the most gruesome of adventures. He was the only family member who'd never left her. Hahn, ever passive and forgettable, had slowly drifted out of the papers during the trial. They say psychopaths don't feel love, but her last moments with her son imply, if not love, then dependence, even obsession. Anna may have seen Oscar as an extension of herself, a tiny mirror she'd created with her shadow lover, an escape hatch. You remember the doctor?
I remember the doctor, Mikkelspouten.
Yeah.
Popperdom.
Mikkelspouten Wegenberger. But at the end, she lost the willing little actor who kept begging and begging for her innocence, and then she was truly alone. He was adopted by another family, and they changed his name. Because they were like, "You're not Oscar anymore." On December the 7th, 1938, Anna walked down death row as condemned men wished her good luck and God bless you from their cells on either side of the corridor. "Goodbye, boys," she responded. I mean, it's better than, "Dead man walking, oh, are you gonna hang, boy?"
Yeah.
Her hair was dishevelled, her face was grey, and she wasn't wearing the gold cross that she'd worn throughout her trial.
Like, thanks for nothing.
Yeah, fucking nice one, God. The moment the door to the execution chamber opened, Anna collapsed at the sight of old Sparky, the electric chair. It had never held a woman before. "Please don't, oh my boy, think of my boy. Won't anyone come and do something for me?" she cried, looking around the room at people who had no ability whatsoever to save her. The attending priests, the 3 physicians, and the horror-struck journalists. "Isn't there anybody to help me? Anyone? Is nobody going to help me?" No. Throughout her life, Anna Hahn had been utterly callous in the face of death. She could stare at a weakened old man covered in his own vomit and shit and poisoned by her own hand and say she barely knew him. Now, she dealt in death all all the time as though it was just another one of her con jobs, like the forgery and the bad checks and the stolen rings. But now that the death was staring back at her, Anna couldn't take it. She had to be carried, thrashing and screaming, to the electric chair. Now, the guard attached one electrode to a shaved piece on her head and a second electrode to her bare calf. As Anna locked eyes with the priest, the guard fitted a black leather mask over her face. The priest asked her to repeat the Lord's Prayer after him, and she did so, crying behind the mask. And some of the duelists in the room repeated the prayer along with her, as she stumbled over the line, "Lead us not into temptation, but deliver." The guards pressed 3 buttons, and the electric current surged through her body. The sound was like a 4th of July sparkler, according to one of the journalists.
Wow.
Her body rose slightly out of the chair, and her thumbs turned upwards. Afterwards, the physicians checked for a heartbeat and found none. "I am surprised she broke," said the warden, who had tears in his eyes. "I had expected her to remain cool." She had been cool for years, but death, of course, would be more cold-blooded. The warden noted that no convict in the prison's history had ever been as terrified as Anna Hahn when faced with the electric chair. And thus ends the ballad of Anna Marie Hahn. So then, what do you think of that?
Fucking mental, wasn't she? Like, dead cold-blooded. Like,
I mean, you know, what happened to that blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy?
This is what I want to know. I feel like, I mean, surely not. Like, he
became a spy for Nazi Germany.
Or, no. I was, like, thinking, did he end up becoming, like, a serial killer, like, after that? Or, like, it's interesting. I'm guessing we don't know, like, what his name was changed to.
No.
Or...
That little boy went on to be Elon Musk. And thus ends the ballad of Anna Marie Hahn again. So, yeah, let us know what you think. Do you think that one? It's cool, another poisoner.
Yeah, a lot of poisoners, a lot of arsenic.
Yeah.
Been doing a lot with arsenic recently, haven't we?
Not personally, but covering cases that have arsenic.
Yeah, not personally, no.
No, not personally, but are we going to eat that bacon they brought?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go eat some bacon. So yeah, if you do like this case, and let us know what you think in the comments. If you want to get in touch with us, you can do. You can find us on email. You can find us on Facebook, email. Fuck's sake. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Email us on enterthedarkpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to help us support us and you like what we do, you can go to Patreon, www.patreon.com/enterthedark. Anything from $1 up to $50. All the names are going up around about now. But yeah, that's it. I've been Jan. He's been Les. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.